And I'm going to ask that you come right onto Shavasana to start today. So, using any props that make you feel grounded and comfortable in Shavasana. Sometimes it's nice to have a bolster under your knees. I find, especially for women, that's something that really helps release the hips. Blocks under your head, even if that's comfortable for you, blanket, whatever works. Making any adjustments to your posture to just ground down, start to embrace that stillness and feel connected to your mat. Taking a body scan and just starting to notice where you feel any tension. Acknowledge that tension, breathe into it, and then release. Letting your feet splay open. Maybe you want to walk your shoulders down your spine a little bit to make some room for your neck. Hands can be on your stomach or palms up beside you, or really wherever is comfortable, or wherever you're drawn. Releasing our jaw and starting to settle in. Start to notice your breath. Our conscious breath is really one of the only ways we can control what's happening in our body and mind. Breathing in deeper and slowing down our breath helps to open our blood vessels and let our heart rate slow down. It helps to bring the balance back to your body and reduce any anxious thoughts and calm our central nervous system. A lot of moments throughout the day, there's things that bring us triggers, make us feel stressed, and coming back to the breath in these moments is a really helpful tool to take back that control and slow things down. Practicing our conscious breath on the mat is helpful to take that yoga off the mat, balancing our body and our minds. Let's elongate the breath here. Sometimes if you've got a little bit of a monkey mind going on, it can help to just count to 6 as you inhale, focusing on that counting, and then counting to 6 as you exhale. Giving the mind something to focus on to help release those tensions and bring us into the room, letting everything else go. We'll take 5 elongated breaths here, in and out. And when you're done, you can just place your hands on your stomach or beside you as a signal that you're done. Embracing that stillness, letting this be the doorway from your day that might have been hectic into a bit more of a mindful evening. When you're done your breathing, you can bring some movement back to your body by wiggling our toes. You can start rolling out your wrists. And just start to invite some small movements as we come back into the space. We're going to start by just keeping our left leg long on the mat and bringing our right knee towards our chest. And just hugging that right knee in. You can be using a strap here if that helps. You can use your hands to grip underneath your thigh or on top of your knee. And just gently guiding your knee a little closer to your chest. Your right foot is in dorsiflexion, so that means that your toes are drawing towards your shin, flexing that foot. And just take some nice deep breaths as you find that edge. Might be a little bit uncomfortable, and easing off if anything is painful. Everything in today's class and every class is optional and it's completely within your control. So, not doing anything that hurts or anything that's uncomfortable. And just taking some nice deep breaths, letting that sink a little bit closer. Releasing our right knee towards our side body. So our right hand is still on that right knee, and just gently pulling your knee in the direction of your armpit. So opening that right hip, starting to get some mobility in that hip, and just gently moving that knee in the direction of your right armpit. And again, breathing into that, always focusing on connecting our breath, flexing our foot so our toes are drawing towards the shin, and just taking some nice deep breaths. Bringing our knee back up to center, and then rotating our knee so it comes over our body towards the left side of the room. This can be supported with a block. You don't have to twist at all if this is uncomfortable on your spine. As an alternative, you can just hug your knee back in towards your chest. If you are taking the twist, your left hand can be on top of your right thigh. Your right hand could be extended out towards the right side of the room. And to deepen that twist a little more, if you want, you can bring your gaze towards your right arm. Taking some nice deep breaths. And then bringing our knee back up to center and releasing that twist, letting your right leg come long on the mat as we move our left leg up, knee towards our chest. Again, taking any of those modifications, strap, hand placement, yogi's choice, and drawing our toes towards our shin as we draw our knee a little closer to our chest. Feeling that nice compressive stretch in our hip as it opens. And finding our breath. Releasing our knee towards the left side of the room. Again, this can be supported by a block if you want this to be a little bit more restorative. And just gently pulling that knee towards our left armpit as we open that hip. And really stretch into that groin. Right hand can be on your stomach if that's comfortable. Shoulders are nice and planted on the ground. Trying to release any tension that's coming from your upper body and really just focusing on that stretch in the hip. And bringing our knee back through center, coming towards that gentle twist over to the right side of the room. So our left knee is crossing our body, Right leg is staying long. Again, this can be supported on a block. Right hand is on the outside of our thigh if you want to help guide that stretch a little deeper. Left arm can be straight out beside us. And if you want to deepen that into our cervical spine, you can turn your head towards the left hand. Again, just finding that breath. And gently releasing that leg and coming back. Both legs come long on the mat, and then we move our left leg and our right leg in towards our chest at the same time, coming in for a nice big squeeze, drawing our knees in. Again, this can be something that you're holding the outside of the back of your thighs as well, just moving in the direction of your chest. And then releasing. Option here to rock up to seated, or you can roll over to one side in a fetal position and push up to a seated position. We're going to, from our seated position, just crossing at the ankles and rolling right over to come onto a tabletop. Taking our knees a little bit wider than we normally have in a child's pose. So as wide as is comfortable for you, we're going to come into a wide kneed child's pose. So coming all the way down. Again, this could be something that you put a bolster. If you've got any knee pain here, you can put a bolster under your bum. So you're kind of sitting on that bolster on the back of your heels, coming into a wide knee child's pose and bringing our hands behind our head and just interlacing those fingers behind our head. You can also have a block here under your head to elevate the top half of your body a little bit. And just find your breath in this pose. Really letting those hips start to open. Taking nice deep breaths. Filling your chest and exhaling. Hands come back to the mat and we're coming back up to a tabletop, moving our knees into that tabletop position. So underneath our hips or a little bit wider. And we're going to come through to some cat and cow. So toes can be tucked for a little bit of added stability or untucked. Hands are under our elbows, which are under our shoulders. And we're just going to start with our cat. So tucking our chin, rounding at the spine and doming our spine as we use our palms to push our body away from the mat, really spreading those shoulder blades apart. And then rolling from the hips, ducking our chest towards the ground, and our gaze comes up towards the ceiling. And then taking that in reverse, chin is tucking down, spine is doming, pushing ourselves away from the mat with our palms. And just taking that movement back and forth, that ripple, that nice ripple movement. And finding your breath. So inhaling on our way up. And exhaling as we come into our cat. Inhaling on our way up. And exhaling on our way down. At any point, if we're on a kneeling position, sometimes it helps to have a blanket under your knees if it's feeling a little bit crunchy. And just taking that 2 more times. So 2 more each side. Really starting to bring some movement to our spine. And once you've done that 2 times, let's find our neutral spine. So this is something that is talked about in a lot of different poses, and I find that tabletop is a really nice chance to kind of workshop what it means to have a neutral spine and a neutral pelvis. So if you are familiar with the concept, you can just tune me out. But if you are trying to understand what neutral spine means, it helps by tucking your tailbone in both directions. And your neutral spine is when you start to feel your core, just a slight engagement in your core. And that load comes off your lower back. So that's really what everyone means when they're talking about neutral spine. We're going to tuck our toes and push ourselves up to our downward dog. We're rotating our biceps towards the outside of the room, so they're rolling away from your ears. Your toes are planted, your heels are driving towards the ground. They do not have to be touching the ground. And your hips are moving in the opposite direction towards the ceiling. Our ears are just nestled between our biceps. And always an option to come on to child's pose or drop to your knees at any point in the class, but especially in downward dog. And just find your breath. I feel like this is one of the poses that I was doing for years before I actually knew how to do it. And that tip of rolling your biceps really changes the way this pose feels. One more deep breath in and out. And then we're going to come back down to our knees. This time we're going to be in a child's pose with our knees a little bit closer. And again, you can have a bolster on the back of your legs here. And we're just going to draw our head towards the ground, not coming into a full child's pose. And then sit our body all the way up into a high kneeling position. Extending our arms behind us and opening our chest. And then ducking back down and folding our arms around us into a little hug. Head comes towards the ground. And doing that same thing again. So bringing our body up. You can use your hands here as well to help your body come up. Arms spread wide, contract your shoulders like you're squeezing a pencil between your shoulder blades. And then fold your body down, giving yourself a nice little hug, bringing your head towards the mat. You can use your hands to guide yourself back up again. One more time, really focusing on drawing our shoulder blades together here. And then coming back down. Maybe you can reach a little bit further with your fingers here, drawing your fingers a little bit further around your back, opening those shoulders, and then coming back up to a tabletop. Again, finding that neutral spine. So if it helps, you can try playing with that tailbone. Maybe you want to tuck the tailbone a little bit, see if that helps engage your stomach. Once you have your stomach engaged, we're going to raise our right knee off the mat, keeping our knee bent, raising our foot towards the ceiling, coming into tiger pose. So what we're trying to do here is use our glute muscle to raise that foot up to the height of whatever your mobility is. So raising it up just by turning on that glute and finding what the height is that you can get that foot to, while keeping our hips square to the mat. So we're not opening our hips here. If we had headlights on our hips, they're shining at the mat. And we're just going to breathe into that, really trying to turn on those glutes. And take some nice deep breaths. Our glutes are probably the least active because we're sitting all day and just trying to counteract that in this pose. Letting our knee come back down to the mat, tucking our toes back underneath us and coming back to that downward dog. Heels are moving in the direction of the mat. Again, they do not have to be planted. Releasing that goal-oriented yoga and just focusing on what feels good for the body. Rolling our biceps towards the outside of the room, away from our ears. and finding our breath again. Option here, we're going to be coming into a plank. So you have an option here of coming right into, you can come into your knees first and then into a modified plank. You can also raise your right leg in the air and move your body forward with your right leg lifted. So coming into a plank, however you want to get there. If you have lifted your right leg, we're just going to go ahead and drop that back down. And we're coming onto a side plank here. So again, you can drop to your knees. If you want to do a modified side plank, you can just kickstand your right leg out, bring our left leg long, and come up into a modified side plank, stretching our left hand out overhead, or coming into a full plank, full side plank, whatever works for you. And then coming back down onto both hands and back down onto that plank, or if you're on your knees, that is completely fine as well. Coming back to our knees, we're going to come to a tabletop position and sit up into tall knees. Stepping our right leg forward, coming into a lizard position. So we want our right leg to be not in front of us, but hiked off to the side of the mat, untucking our back toes. And this is where blocks can be super helpful as well, because you can just come onto blocks on your hands. What we're trying to do is lean into that right knee and really feel that left hip opening. So whether you're on blocks or not, just leaning into that right knee, or having our hands planted directly on the mat. And again, if this hurts your knee, just put a blanket under there. An option, if it's accessible to you, it's not accessible to me because I've got really tight hips. You can also come down onto your forearms by just finding whatever works for you and taking some nice deep breaths, really feeling that in our left hip, in the front of our left hip. And breathing into that pose. This one's tricky, so just remembering to connect to your breath. And just settle in. Moving back towards the center, so moving away from that right knee. We're going to just come all the way back, bring your bum a little bit closer to our heel, and our right foot comes off the mat. The ball of our, sorry, I should say the heel of the foot is still on the mat. And we're just coming into a half monkey. So that right foot is straight, and we're just leaning over that, switching where we feel that stretch. So now it's all in the back in that hamstring. And our toes are drawing towards our shins. So in that dorsiflexion, toes are drawing towards the shin, and just finding some nice deep breaths here. This, of course, does not have to be a straight leg. There can be a bend in this. Hamstrings are definitely a difficult area. So just doing whatever helps you feel it in your hamstrings. And taking some nice deep breaths. And then go ahead and release that stretch, keeping our foot where it is. So this is kind of going to be an interesting transition. So just listening a little here. So bring our right hand onto the inside of our right foot. So both our hands are planted. And we're just going to lift that foot up and bring it behind us. If you want to come down to your knees as a starting point as well, that's completely fine. We're coming into something that I've heard called fallen dancer. I don't know if that's actually a real yoga pose, but either way, we're going to try and do it. So keeping our left hand planted on the mat, we're just reaching towards that right foot with our right knee in the air. So you can stay in that pose where you just basically reach for that foot. That's really fine. If you want to try kicking that foot out a bit and coming into a baby back bend, that is also an option available to you. If you are kicking that foot out, the balance comes from simultaneously pulling that foot in towards your body. So that tension, that counter tension, opposing tension, I should say, that's where you find the stability in the pose and releasing that to the mat. Our hips are above our knees, still in that tabletop. Keeping our hips where they are, we're just going to walk our hands out and come into puppy pose. So there's a couple variations here. If it's part of your practice, you can bring your chin down to the mat. That's not something that I can access, so I'm just going to put my forehead on the mat. Your forehead can also be on a block, and we're just trying to let our chest sink down a little bit, keeping our hips relatively over our knees. And just taking some nice deep breaths, letting our body and our central nervous system calm down. And letting our heart rate slow back down a little bit. And when we're ready, we're just going to walk our hands back up to that tabletop position. Our hands are stacked under our elbows, which are stacked under our shoulders. Knees are under our hips or wider. And we're coming back to that neutral spine. So if it helps to play with your tailbone tuck a little bit, so going back and forth and then finding where you feel that there's a slight core engagement and the load is off our lower back. Bringing our left leg up this time, so shifting our weight to our right. Our left foot comes up towards the sky, keeping our knee bent and trying to turn that glute muscle on in the back, the left butt muscle. Turning that on as the way to raise that foot. And this doesn't have to be high in the sky. We're just wanting to activate that glute muscle. So it doesn't need to be way up in the air to do that, but just bringing our attention to that left butt muscle. And taking some nice deep breaths once you find that edge. And then lower our knee back to the ground. You can shake out your hips a little bit, swaying them from side to side, tucking our toes and pushing ourselves all the way back up into our downward dog. And you can move in your downward dog. This doesn't have to be stationary. You can pedal your dog out, walk the dog. You can move your hips if that feels good. Even shake your head. Really, whatever comes to you that you feel like you need to move. And breathing the whole time. Biceps are rotating to the outside of the room. And finding our nice deep breath. We're coming into plank next. So again, you can drop to the knees and come into a modified plank. Come right into plank if you want, or option to lift our left leg and then move our body into plank. Taking a nice deep breath there, pushing your hands away from the mat so that your back has a slight dome. And then go ahead and drop that left foot. And coming to our knees or coming right to a side plank. If you're doing a modified side plank, we're on our knees and we're kickstanding that left foot out, bringing our right foot long, and then raising that right arm. And taking some nice deep breaths. Feeling that all throughout that right side body. Option to gaze through your right armpit towards the ceiling. That can create a little bit more of a challenge balance-wise. So if that's not what you're after, I wouldn't recommend that. And then releasing to the mat, back to that tabletop position and using our hands to help us come up onto tall knees. Working our way back to that lizard pose on this side. So taking a nice big step forward with our left leg, heel toeing that to the outside of the mat. Option for blocks here as we lean into that left knee a little bit, feeling that in our right, the front of our right hip. You can have your toes tucked here or untucked, whatever feels more comfortable for your stability and your alignment. And then if it's available to you, bringing your hands down to the mat or down to blocks or down to your forearms, if you can get down there. And just finding wherever is comfortable for your body to really feel that stretch in that the front hip. The right front hip. And connecting to our breath in every pose. Our gaze is just in front of us on the mat so that we have a lot of space in that cervical spine, our neck. And finding our breath. Moving our body back towards our midline. Shifting our bum back towards our heel. You can keep your foot planted or your knee bent, really whatever helps you feel that stretch in our hamstring. Coming into half monkey. So you got one hand on one side of your leg and one on the other for added stability. Taking some nice deep breaths here. And we're drawing, if the ball of your foot is off the mat here, drawing our toes towards our shin again, really feeling that hamstring activate as it stretches. And releasing that. Again, we're going to try to come into that fallen dancer. So you have an option to come right back to your knee. If you want, you can try to sweep your left leg all the way back and go for the ankle without dropping your foot or coming at this pose from your knees. If you are coming at it from your knees, we're just going to shift our weight to our right side. So our right knee and our right hand, lifting our left leg off the ground and reaching for that back ankle. And if you are trying to take a little baby back bend here, kicking with that left foot as you pull with your kicking with your left foot as you pull with your left hand to create that opposition and give you that stability. And just finding your breath. Gaze can be at the left wall or it can be at the mat in front of you. And then releasing ourselves back to our tabletop position. Tucking our toes and pushing ourselves all the way up to our downward dog. Taking whatever movement feels good. So maybe you want to sway your hips. Maybe you want to walk your dog, bending one knee at a time. Or maybe you just want to be in stillness in this pose. Whatever works for you, just yogi's choice, and take some nice deep breaths. Focusing on the fundamentals. So we're rolling our biceps towards the outside of the room. Our hips are driving towards the ceiling. Our heels are moving in the direction of the ground. And we're just finding some breath. Taking 2 deep breaths in and out here. And then raising our right foot in the air, looking forward and taking a nice big step forward. Planting our back foot so our heel is on the mat and pushing up into our warrior 2. So our left foot is parallel to the back of the mat. Our right foot is pointing forward and we're just bending into that right knee. Arms come up into airplane modes like a jet. And we're looking out over our right hand. We're going to sweep our hands up as we straighten that leg. So arms come up overhead as we straighten that leg, and then arms sweep back down as we bend back into that right knee. And we're just going to find our breath with that movement. So taking a nice deep breath in here and out, and then inhaling to reach up overhead, exhaling to come back down. Inhaling to reach up overhead and exhaling to come back down. One more time. Inhaling to reach up overhead, exhaling, coming back down to our warrior two. And if you want, you can take another deep breath in as we sink a little bit deeper if it's comfortable for you. Another deep breath. And we're going to be rotating on our back foot. So rotating on the ball of the left foot so that we face forward coming into a high lunge. So our ball of our foot is planted, our right heel is in the, sorry, our left heel is in the air. And on our left leg, we want to draw our kneecap up the leg. And the second you focus on drawing that kneecap up the leg, you're going to feel that front of your leg, that quad, fire up. Once you've got that left quad fired up, moving your attention to your left glute and activate that as well. Tighten up your butt. And then you can sink a little bit deeper into that high lunge. And our hands can come up overhead. Taking a nice deep breath in here. And every so often, just check on that left leg because that's super, super active in this pose. And it's really easy to just kind of let that hang out there and not really be super fundamental in the pose. So just every so often, go back to your butt cheek and tighten that butt cheek back up again. And breathe. Nice deep breaths in and out. Releasing our hands, you can take a few hops in. We're trying to get to the top of the mat. You can take a few hops in or one step up to the top of the mat. And we're moving towards eagle pose. So eagle pose is a pretty intense balancing pose. So there's always an option to do a tree here instead. You can just put your toes on the mat and put your heel on your ankle, or foot can come onto the calf or onto the thigh, just not on our knee. So that's one option. If you want to try our eagle pose, there's a first step being crossing your foot and just balancing on your toes with your left leg crossed over and just staying right there. That's totally fine as well. Second option is to bend our right leg, cross our left leg over, and even just staying there, that's totally fine too. If you want to try to take the bind, you're crossing your legs as high as you can, like as tightly as you can, and moving that left foot so the toes are peeking out behind your standing leg. I'm a little wobbly today, so I'm just gonna not worry about the bind and just try to find my balance and sink a little bit deeper into that seated position. Option here to just have our hands up overhead. If you want to take the eagle arms or even just a variation of it, wrapping the left arm over the right. So sorry, right arm comes under the left and we're meeting our palms, or palms can be back to back as a variation. And then just lifting our elbows away from our body and sinking a little bit deeper and trying to find your breath. And if you fall out, that's part of balancing poses. If you fall out, just be compassionate with yourself and come back in to whatever version suits you. And then release, and let's shake out that standing leg. Bringing ourselves to our mountain pose, so feet are hip distance apart. Working on some fundamentals again here. So we're grounding down at the base of the big toe, base of the pinky toe, and our heel. as we move up our legs, draw our knees up our body, coming into the glutes, tightening up the glutes and finding that neutral spine again. So maybe you need to tuck your tailbone a little bit, feel that slight core engagement, and then our hands come out to our sides. Maybe take a shrug with your shoulders, drawing your shoulders down, and gaze comes towards the front of the room. So again, this is a pose that it's super easy to just stand here, but engaging all those little pieces is really what makes you feel like you're in that mountain pose. Taking a nice deep breath, a pose with purpose. And then falling forward, hinging at the hips into our forward fold. Hands come to our shins for a halfway lift or flat back. And then you can bend at the knee here, bring your hands all the way to the mat and stepping back either to a plank or to a modified plank. If you are in, well, either way, it works. Trying to push your hands from the mat so you feel a slight dome in the top of your back. And before we lower our body to the ground, you want to move your shoulders beyond your hands and then lower all the way to the ground. Untucking our toes, hands come beyond our body. So moving forward on the mat, even off the mat, and then using our shoulders, like the back of our body, to pull ourselves up. So again, in this pose, we're not relying on our arms. That's definitely there to help, but pretending like you're trying to pinch a pencil between your shoulder blades and squeeze those shoulder blades together, and then bring your attention to your glutes again. What are they doing? Let's fire them up. Protect our lower back. And again, this does not need to be something that's sky high. Definitely working on the function and the stability before we try to do anything too deep. And then releasing all the way to the mat, tucking our toes, either coming up to our knees first or pushing all the way up to downward dog. And taking some nice, deep restorative breaths here. You can also come down to a child's pose, of course, at any point, and really just modifying and doing what is right for your body when it's right for your body. Biceps are rolling towards the outside of the room. Hips are driving towards the ceiling. Heels are moving towards the ground, and we're just finding our breath. One more deep breath in and out here. Raising our left leg in the sky this time. Gaze comes forward, taking a big step forward with your left leg. Heel, back heel, right heel drops to the mat. So we're in a warrior two position, and then standing up to our warrior two. So our right foot is at the back of the mat. It's parallel to the mat. And again, let's engage this whole leg and up into this glute by drawing that kneecap up the body, and then bending a little bit deeper into that left knee, and hands can sweep up. Taking some nice deep breaths here. And this doesn't have to be a super wide stance as well. Always options to shorten your stance. And just find what works for you. And just find our breath. So we're going to be turning this into a little bit of a flow again. So let's take a nice deep breath in and out here. And on our next inhale, standing up tall, raising our hands above our head, reaching up, and then exhaling as we bring our hands back down and bend back into that knee. Inhaling to rise, exhaling back to warrior two. One more time, inhaling to rise, exhaling back into warrior two. Nice deep breath here. And then we're pivoting on the right foot. So our heel comes off the mat. The balls of our feet, our right foot is still on the mat. I'm having trouble with my left and right today for some reason. And let's focus on that right leg. So it's not just hanging there loosey-goosey, moving our knee up our leg, Feeling that front of the leg, the quad really fire up, and then bring our attention to our right glute and squeeze that right butt, and then bend into that left knee, and then sweep your hands up if that's what you want to do. Hands can also come to your side or heart center. And finding your breath here, but remembering to check in on that right leg, because it's super easy to forget about it and just let it hang out and let it not do any work. Checking in on that glute and just tightening it back up and finding your breath. If your hands are above your head, what are your shoulders doing? Are they coming up towards your ears? If so, just shrugging them back down and giving space for your neck. And then option 2, take a couple steps in or one big step to meet your left foot at the top of the mat. Maybe give it a little shake out. That right glute just did a bunch of work. Coming into eagle's pose. So you know that you've got tree as a variation if you don't want to cross that leg. You can also just take that one cross with your toes, your right toes on the ground beside you. You can bend that left knee and just take that first sort of phase, I'll call it, of the bind, bending a little bit into that seat. That's where I'm going to stay, but you can also tuck that right foot behind and go for the full bind. Totally your call. If you're coming into eagle arms, see, I'm a little wobbly today. So if you're coming into eagle arms, you're reaching your hands up overhead. Your left arm is sweeping underneath your right, and you can leave it with the backs of your hands kind of touching, or take that full eagle bind where your palms are touching. And if you are in that full eagle bind, just trying to move our elbows a little bit away from the body to feel that stretch in the right shoulder, and finding our breath. And if you wobble like I am, just coming back into that pose in whatever way works for you, and coming back to your breath. One more deep breath in and out, and then releasing to the mat. And let's give that leg a nice little shake. Both legs a little shake. And setting up for our mountain pose again. So our feet are hip distance or wider, grounding down to those 3 points. So base of the big toe, base of the pinky toe, and our heel, feeling like we're kind of hugging the mat. Coming up to our knees, pulling our kneecaps up our leg, feeling our quads turn on, getting to our glute, tightening up our glutes, maybe taking that slight tuck of your tailbone to engage your stomach, shrugging our shoulders up and then away from our neck, and feeling the strength in this mountain pose. And just breathing into that strength and breathing into that stillness. And then on our next exhale, hinging at the waist and letting our body fold forward. Inhaling up to our halfway lift, so hands on shins, halfway lift, flat back. And then exhaling down, you can bend at the knees here, planting our hands and stepping back either to our plank or to our modified plank. Pushing away from the mat, so we've got that slight dome in the top of our back, like where our shoulders are. Moving our hands beyond our shoulders and then lowering to the mat all the way. Untucking our toes. And if you've got any issues with back bends here, just staying in this pose and having a moment to have a breath. If you're coming into an upward pose, moving our hands beyond our shoulders. And then again, finding that strength with our back, not our arms. So drawing our shoulders back as if we're pinching a pencil between our shoulder blades. And then tightening up our glutes. And then using our arms to support us. So trying to bring all that focus to our back body and really trying to undo all of that sitting and all of that hunching that everybody does with desk jobs and just looking at our phones and all those things that everybody's doing all day, every day. Counteracting that in our glutes and by drawing our shoulders and opening our chest, and then release to the mat. Tucking our toes, tucking our toes, bringing our hands beneath our shoulders, and pushing ourselves back to our downward dog. And again, finding our breath here. We're not going to stay here too long. We're going to step up to the top of the mat with both feet and slowly roll ourselves all the way to standing. Turning so that we're actually sideways on the mat, and I'm going to recommend moving to the center of the mat. Let's bring our feet so they're a little bit farther apart than our hip distance. And we're going to sink ourselves back to a garland pose or a yogi squat. If you've got limited ankle mobility, I would recommend putting a bolster under your heels here, or a towel or anything under your heels. We're going to sit our bum back into a garland pose. And again, this is also something you could be seated on a block, but sometimes it's not even, it's just your mobility in your ankle that can prevent this pose from really working out. So think about that bolster or those towels if your feet aren't planted. Biceps kind of tuck around our knees. And then we're trying to shine our chest forward a little bit. So try to find a little bit of height in your spine. Using those biceps helps quite a bit, and just take some nice breaths. And again, if this is really uncomfortable, just please come out of it and try sitting on a block and releasing your knees a little bit. This can be a little bit hard on the knees if you've got any knee issues as well. So let me know if there's anything as well that you want to tell me for the next class so I can offer more specific modifications, of course. Nice deep breath in and out. And then releasing our hands and kind of moving forward. So we're putting a little bit of weight on our hands. We're going to come up onto the ball of our left foot and straighten that right foot out beside us. And you can just stay right there with our right foot out. It can even be planted if that heel is uncomfortable on your knees. If you want to try, this is our crescent moon lunge. If you are in the pose and you want to give it a go, you can try to lift your hands up and see if you could balance a little bit. If you want to try, you don't have to. There you go, Tony. And again, this one can be a little bit hard on the left knee, especially. So as an alternative, you can just come to a seated position and do like a knee to nose. So we're sitting on your bum as opposed to up on that toe. Taking a nice deep breath. And then we're gonna move over like a little bit of a flow. So we're planting that right foot. Our bum is coming up towards the ceiling. And then we're bending into that right knee and lifting that left foot. So the ball of our right foot is now on the mat and our left toes are pointing towards the sky. Yeah, exactly. And again, alternative is to just sit right down on your bum. And if you feel like you've got this and you want to try, you can come up to your fingertips as a starting point if that's what you want to do, or you can try to take a little bit of a balance. My balance is a little bit off today, so I'm surprised this is slightly working. Not that well though. And just breathing by drawing our left toes in towards our shin and really just taking that nice hamstring stretch all the way into that groin and taking some nice deep breaths. And then let's release that again. So coming back into those sort of garland feet. So they're hip distance or so or wider, and just sinking back into that garland pose one more time. Using our biceps to kind of hug our knees out, and then see if you can shine your chest forward just a little bit. Using our biceps and our shoulders to kind of contract. Taking a nice deep breath. Won't stay here too long. And then let's just release and sit down on our bum and face long ways on our mat again. Coming all the way down to the mat, bringing our strap with us. We're going to do a little bit of a hamstring stretch series. So left leg is long on the mat, and we're taking our strap, bending at the right knee, and just tucking our strap around the ball of our right foot. So it's not in the middle of the foot because we don't want to put any unnecessary pressure on our knees. It's on the ball of the foot. And then letting that leg go long. It doesn't have to go up in front of you. It can be long, like just raised in the air. It doesn't have to be like sky high. Using our strap to just move that in the direction of our head. Again, not really concerned with how high that goes, just really trying to focus on where you're feeling that stretch. So feeling it in the back of that leg. And what I always find is I have a tendency to fight the strap with my foot a little bit. So see if you're fighting the strap, if you're pushing against the strap with your foot, and just let it go. Our shoulders and our neck are relaxed and on the ground, and we're not like white knuckling the strap. We're just gently guiding our leg. Nice deep breaths in and out here. And then similar to the knee, the wind relieving pose at the beginning, we're just going to open that hip to the right. So moving the strap to our right hand and opening that hip to the right and pulling that foot as if it's coming towards your armpit. Again, our shoulders are nice and on the mat. Our left hip is also, our left glute is also still on the mat. So you can use your left hand to help you remember that, putting it on your left hip. And this is also a really good option if you've got a wall beside you and you want this to be a little bit more restorative. You can rest this on a wall, rest it on a block. And of course, you don't have to do it at all. It's always, everything's always optional. Nice deep breaths. Bending at the knee and bringing that right foot up towards the ceiling again. And then similar to that little sequence we did at the beginning, we're just going to cross it over our bodies. And this time your right glute can come off the mat. And just feeling where that changes the stretch. For me, this really moves it to sort of the outside of the right knee, like the back of my right knee. And it shoots all the way up to my glute and the back of my hip. Just feeling how it's different in each little variation. And then release and let your right leg go long on the mat. And doing the same with our left. So bring our left knee close to us, reaching up, putting that strap around the ball of our left foot. And pulling that in towards your nose, in the direction of your nose. And taking some nice deep breaths, letting our shoulders stay on the ground. And then letting it go open to the left. And again, this can always be supported. You can use a wall to support this, blocks, or even just taking that variation where you've got a bent leg and you're just doing it with the knee. Bending at the knee and crossing over our body, letting our left glute come off the mat and just pulling that that left leg towards the right side of the room. Not sure why my left and rights are challenging me today, but